Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. We appreciate you joining us again here today. A while back I did a video on the Glock 43X, and no sooner than finished that video then the comments started coming in about the Glock 48. Some people wanted to know why I didn't have its own video. Well, it was just used for size comparison. Some people wanted to emphasize how much better the Glock 48 is for carry than the Glock 43X, even though they're very similar. Is the 48 better than the 43X? Well, we're going to address that and many other questions in just a minute. All right, once again, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Just want to take a moment to thank all of our viewers and subscribers for getting involved in the comments, making suggestions for what we're talking about and engaging with other commenters, sharing information. That's what we're here for, is to make people better and safer, whether you're a new shooter, whether you've been doing this for a long time. So we can't thank you enough. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet, if you want to kind of locate that little button there in the lower right hand corner of your computer screen that says subscribe, you can give that a poke, or you can scroll down if you're on a mobile device. Just scroll down below the video and hit subscribe and hit the bell icon, and it'll let you know when we do something new. It helps us out a lot and we really appreciate it. So today it's the Glock 48. Once again, I had no sooner than got the video for the 43X uploaded than people started emailing me and commenting about the 48, and I could understand why. This gun, along with the 43X, these both came out in early 2019. And I actually picked them up together, not really knowing which one I was going to have the most favor for, so I figured I'd take them both and try them out. And that was a long journey. But we'll get to that in a minute. But let's just we normally do a little size comparison for you here, and I'm going to do that. So let's take our 48 here with something that most people be familiar with, which would be a Glock 19. So there's your Glock 19. If you look at it side by side, you can see that the basic outline of these two guns is very, very similar. Okay, and technically the 48 is just a hair longer than the Glock 19. Not by much, but as far as length in a holster, I don't think you would ever know the difference. Where you will know the difference is the thickness. If you look at them this way, you can really see what I'm talking about. The 48 is much, much slimmer than the Glock 19. And of course, this is a gun that is a single stack versus a double stack, and we'll get into the specs here in a minute. But that was kind of the whole idea in the first place, was to make a slimmer, lighter model for carry. And I think they've succeeded in doing so, this one along with the other. So that's your basic comparison, just looking at them side by side. So let's talk about the features for a minute. Well, what can I say? It's a Glock. And if you're familiar with Glocks at all, you know that they are, at this point in the game, all very similar pistols. You're talking about a polymer framed, striker fired handgun. This particular model, once again, we have a 10 round single stack magazine, and this is also what the 43X uses. Now, there are some aftermarket magazines that are available for this pistol that carry 15 rounds. I'm not going to get into too much detail with that because from all accounts and other shooters and people that I work with together, there's been some trouble getting them. They're in real short supply, and of course that has to do with a really high demand on ammunition, guns, and supplies in general right now. But there are some aftermarket magazines out there that will increase the capacity of this to 15 rounds. Some even saying that would make the Glock 19 obsolete. I don't agree with that, because I think there are different purposes for those pistols, but we'll come back to that one in just a second. But anyway, you got a single stack magazine. You have your magazine release here, which is actually reversible, and you have this particular one has the Trijicon night sights on it. So it's a nice white dot, plus you've got your glow-in-the-dark component there too. I think the only thing I would have done differently with this one is what I did with the 43X, and it was just a matter of what was available at the time. But the 43X has actually got the Ameriglow night sights, and see that orange front sight? That thing shows up so much easier and better. And if I'd had the opportunity at the time, I believe I would have gotten that same sight set up on this one. But don't get me wrong, the regular Trijicon night sights, they show up really well during the day, and they show up really good at night, so they're great. There's no problems there at all. They've got these serrations on the front and back of the slide. If you've ever picked up a regular Glock 19, obviously it doesn't have that. So that's something that is different about the 48, and I like that quite a bit. Now, just looking at some of the data available from Glock, this has what they call the, it's a match grade. Glock calls it the GMB, the Glock Marksman barrel, which is supposed to be more accurate. And, you know, to me, most of my Glocks all shoot the same. But when we get to the range section of the video, I'll tell you about how this shoots compared to the other Glocks. But looking at Glock and what they say about the gun, of course, it's they're calling it a 4.17 inch barrel. With an empty magazine, it's 20.74 ounces, and with a loaded magazine, it's 25.12 ounces. So not too bad. It ends up being a very light, but very, I think 10+1 is very capable as far as, you know, having enough ammo for a carry gun. I'm not one of these people that really obsesses over the amount of ammo that's in my carry gun in the first place, but that's not too bad at all. All right, so of course we're going to talk about our basic, you know, maintenance cleaning procedure, which is always going to start with dropping the magazine. And while we're talking about the magazines, you know, keep in mind, if you're considering getting any of these pistols, just keep in mind that, you know, the single stack magazine fed Glocks, you know, your 48, your 43X, and even your 43, you know, these are not going to work with any of your traditional Glock magazines that came before, because those are double stack magazines. Not a big deal, but it's just something to consider in your cost, because you know, you're going to want extra magazines if for no other reason, in case, you know, something breaks. I don't carry a ton of magazines with me at all times when I'm carrying the pistol, usually just one spare. But, you know, if something did happen and that was the only magazine I had for the gun, then that would be a bad situation, especially, you know, right now when it's hard to get stuff. But anyway, just thought I'd throw it out there. So the procedure is going to be like any other Glock that you're familiar with. So let's make sure that we're clear. Obviously, we dropped our mag already. You can see straight through the mag well. There's nothing in there, and you can look and you can see the reflection off the feed ramp into the barrel and see that we are empty. So, like all others, you're going to grab a hole, put some pressure on the top of the slide, and pull it back ever so slightly. And you're going to take these two notches right here, pull it down, and then push forward. And when you do that, it comes right off of the frame just like that. Then you can take your spring and your rod out, and you can take your barrel out, and you can take your slide off. And then just like that, you have separated your parts. Pretty simple. And I always say that while you've got it apart, this is a really good opportunity. You have these little metal ridges here on each side of the frame where the slide goes back and forth. I always touch these with just a drop of oil, and I make sure to get a drop of oil here in the internal mechanisms where they move. Not much. When I say a drop, I mean literally a drop, because, you know, it doesn't take a whole lot for it to come oozing out of the gun, and that's not something I'm a fan of. That's just me. So anyway, things go back together, and of course, reverse order. Just take your barrel, go right back in there. You have your spring and your rod. If you look here in the slide, you see a little ridge right there. because this actually stops right here. It doesn't go all the way to the front. It just rests on the inside ridge. Then you're going to push this down to the notch. There's a little half round notch that this goes into. Then of course you're just going to line everything back up on the frame and just come on back all the way. Then once you have it back all the way, you just do a quick function check and you're good to go. Put your magazine back in and no problem. So as you can see, that's a pretty straightforward procedure. Okay, let's talk about the range. So one of the questions that I had come up a lot on this pistol was comparing the way this gun shoots to the Glock 19, the Glock 43, and the Glock 43X. I don't feel like it's really an effective use of time to try to compare all four of those, but I think I can get where you're wanting to go here by telling you this. So if you've shot a Glock 19, in my opinion, I think maybe in the opinion of many, it's one of the easiest shooting, predictable pistols out there. It doesn't take to me, there's not a real big learning curve with learning to shoot a Glock 19 and being consistent with it. It's a gun that a lot of new shooters will begin shooting with, even if they don't end up carrying a Glock 19, just because it's very, very good for learning fundamentals, and then you can kind of go from there. Well, shooting a Glock 48, to me, it wasn't that much different than shooting my Glock 19, except for the fact that I could feel it a little more in my hand. You've got that slimmer frame, and holding this gun, I remember the first time I shot my Glock 43 at the range. After I shot several magazines through it, I could really start to feel it in my hand. And shooting the Glock 19, I didn't get as much of that energy into my hand after shooting a lot of rounds through it. The larger gun apparently was able to absorb a bit more of the energy and less of it went into my hand. Well, this gun's a little lighter and a little slimmer. And after shooting 100 rounds through the pistol, I could definitely feel it in my hand a little more than the 19. Was it a big deal? Absolutely not. Just like shooting the 43. The 43 actually was, almost stung a little bit after shooting several magazines, but it did not discourage me from keeping right on shooting it. It's a joy to shoot. That's the way this is. It's a joy to shoot, and it's just as controllable to me as my Glock 19 is. And it feels good in the hand. It just feels, it just feels a little more energy is coming into your hand when you shoot the gun. Accuracy, very, very good. It took me a minute to get used to shooting this gun, just because in my mind, I'm so used to the way that either the small Glock shoot or the larger Glock shoot that when I picked this one up, I didn't really know what to expect. And it's kind of in between. It's not as flippy and snappy as a 43, but it's not quite as heavy and stable as a 19, but almost. So really good groups. I was able to pick up pretty fast. Reliability. I always bring several types of, range ammo with me, as well as hollow points. And as expected, it's a Glock once again. It did really well with the S&B ammo, the Winchester, Blazer brass, hollow points. I ran Hydro Shocks. I ran Sig V Crown. No problems. About 500 rounds total in the first day of shooting, which is about all I could stand because I had other guns to shoot. And I didn't have any failures of any kind, which I didn't really expect because it's a Glock, and I can't honestly remember having any real failures with a Glock of any kind that I've had. So range results were extremely positive. Now, so the question is, which one's better, the 48 or the 43? Well, when you shoot them, the 43 shoots very similar to the 48, but it's just a little more flippy. Well, obviously it's got a shorter barrel. everything about these two guns is identical except for the shorter barrel. And so naturally, the response out of the 43 is going to be a little more flippy than this gun. So the 48, to me, I was able to get better groups consistently. I still got good groups with the 43X, but I was able to shoot much tighter groups with the 48 than I was the 43X. Unless I just really, really slow down. And to me, whenever I train, I try to shoot, as rapidly as I can in a realistic scenario, for training the way I would actually need to use the gun. And in doing so, the 48 was a little bit more accurate consistently. So, does that mean the 48's better than the 43? Not necessarily. It just means it was a little more accurate for me consistently at the range. And once again, this is me. This is my shooting. So, I always caution people, you can watch range videos and watch other people shoot all day long, and that doesn't really mean anything, because all that tells you is how well that individual can shoot that gun. It may be completely different for you. But in comparison, the 48 for me was a little bit easier to make tighter groups on a consistent basis, but a very, very good shooting pistol. So what's it like to carry the Glock 48? Well, I'll tell you, I've got a couple different setups for the 48. But I got to tell you, I always kind of end up coming back to the same place on small pistols. And once again, Sticky to the rescue. And once again, you'll see me break out the Sticky holders a lot. And, Sticky doesn't pay me a dime to talk about their holsters. I just really like them. And here's another example of why I like them. Okay, this holster here, you get a very slim firearm, and then you stick it inside the Sticky holster, which doesn't really add hardly any width at all. You can put this in the waistband, and once you tighten your belt up, this material will grip the inside of the denim, and hold next to the body, and it'll stay put consistently. I mean, unless you are, running a marathon and getting really, really active and your belt's not quite tight enough, these will stay in place. And then it's a very easy draw. Now, of course, the trade-off with using something like this is you're not going to have any retention to hold the firearm in place if something happens. For some people, that may be not a big deal at all. Retention may be the least thing they're worried about. But I had to say that, because that is a trade-off. If you have something like this, then of course you're going to have no mechanical, there's no locking devices, so you need to be real aware of your firearm at all times, which you should anyway. If you're using a Kydex holster that has some kind of locking device or anything, whether it's got a thumb snap, whatever it is, you need to always have situational awareness and always be thinking about where your firearm is and make sure it's where it's supposed to be and that everything is fine with that. But anyway, when I am carrying this, I can put this inside the waistband, and this extra length, we're talking about comparing it, because we're going to talk about the 43X as well. You gotta remember, these are identical except for that little bit of barrel length. So when it's in the holster, the 48 doesn't feel any different to me when it's inside the waistband than the 43X. So as far as carrying it, it's extremely comfortable. I don't even notice that I have the gun on me, and it's no different than carrying the 43 or any other very small pistol. If you have a good holster like this, the gun almost disappears. I didn't have any issues with printing. Now this is with a heavy outer shirt, and I also tried it with a t-shirt and then like a fishing shirt. No issues at all. I tend to press mine down to the waistband pretty low, so I had the minimal amount sticking out. But the other thing I like about this is, if you're worried about it printing, when you have a sticky holster, obviously the cant is going to make a big difference over what shows. If this is the part that tends to print, well, it depends on whether it's sticking up or maybe sideways. And while it's in the waistband, you can make these little adjustments to where it sits the way you want to. That's the other reason I like carrying these, is if you're carrying and you go to get in the car, well, you know, right before I sit down, I can push this forward just a little bit to change the cant so the bottom of the grip here in the magazine don't press against my leather seats. Not necessarily going to be a problem, but I prefer not to have the gun pressing into the seat, just in case, you know, you don't want to tear your seats up. And then when you get out, use real quickly, you can just take a finger in your waistband, and you can straighten it right back up. So I've always found that to be a very easy and effective method. But the 48 carries extremely well. It's very comfortable, and it honestly feels the same way as the 43X or even the 43 on your belt. So no issues at all. So let's look at the overall picture. So 48. We talked about the features and how it carries, and of course we were making some comparisons to its little brother, the 43X. So which one's better overall? Well, I don't really think that there's a better. I think that if you carry in a manner that the barrel length is negligible, then it makes a little more sense to me to carry the 48, just because with the longer barrel, you know, you have a little bit longer sight distance here. So between that and of course the longer barrel length, you get a little bit more accurate shooting out of the gun. And so why not? If you can have a longer barrel and it carries just the same, then the 48 makes a lot of sense. Now of course the one thing I would do differently on this one would be to get the same sights that the 43X has, because I really like that Ameriglow setup with that orange front sight. That thing is just, you pick it up so fast, and that's one thing I really wish that this had. But you know what? It may be time to upgrade this and change those sights out. But overall, really good shooting pistol. Feels good in the hand. It carries really well. Of course, it's a Glock, so you have the kind of reliability that you would expect. And this is also a really good choice, I think, for a new shooter. Just like the Glock 19 is, you know, an extremely reliable platform that anyone can learn with, I feel the same way about this Glock 48. As a matter of fact, in my last outing with this pistol, I always try to share my equipment when I'm out there with new shooters and help people the way I can. And I let some new shooters use this one as well, and they really had a good time with it. Had several ladies that were shooting for the first time. They enjoyed it. They enjoyed the fact that it was a larger, kind of a larger frame, easy to handle, but it didn't hurt. It didn't feel like some of the larger pistols that, you know, they feel like are a little more scary and overpowering. You know, it's a 9mm Glock, and it shoots really well with that longer barrel. So overall, very good. So 48 versus 43X, which one's better? Well, that's kind of up to you. But for me, if you can take the choice between the two of them, the 48 makes a little more sense with the longer barrel. So, but you'll have to decide for yourself. Anyway, I think that's going to do it, guys. We really appreciate you joining us again today. And, you know, once again, we really appreciate you taking the time to watch our videos and subscribe, get involved in the conversation. It really helps out a lot. And once again, if you hadn't had a chance to subscribe, if you can locate that little subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner there and give that a smash, or scroll down below the video if you're on a mobile device, and you can hit subscribe, hit the bell icon. It'll let you know whenever we do something new. Well, we can't thank you enough. That's going to do it for today. We'll be back real soon with another video for you. So until then, be safe. Thank you, and we'll be back soon.